How is this still going on? This verse been going for way too long. If you ain't blind, you can see that this is wrong. And I won't comply. Not me, no way.
Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. We've got an interview with the guy who yelled at Chrystia Freeland. Wow. Pierre Poilievre, after much pressure, weighs in on it, and it's a good response. Justin Trudeau weighs in on it as well, and it's an insane thing that he's talking about, considering the context of everything that's happened. Justin Trudeau goes off on this like it's the worst thing that could possibly have happened in Canada, and it's very, very funny. Well, when I show it to you, it will be. You'll see what I mean. The government awards to push the vaccine, they handed out $50,000, which seems like not very much money, to universities and other people who were pushing the vaccine as safe and effective before they could have possibly known if it was safe and effective. No time for trials to come back, etc., etc. Pierre says no to WEF at all in his ministers. That's what he says. And I'll show you part of that speech. And he's also talking, well, what about Baird, right? Baird is, as far as I know, affiliated with the WEF, and that's a co-chair. So that's a lingering question, Mr. Poilievre. Cash to be phased out, yes, in the UK. So I'll show that to you as well. And we are giving money from the federal government, taxpayer money from the federal government, to LGBT groups in provinces. And I feel like this is similar to funding the anti-hate networks. And I think that we're going to get a similar activist feel from the LGBT groups after we see this funding coming in. I said evangelize, and I don't necessarily mean evangelize LGBT whatever, but I think evangelizing the government's position is what that money's for. And if the government's position is LGBT is super positive, then we're going to see a further push. And there's already been a big push, which has busted things like HBO was doing a children's programming, and they just tanked a bunch of shows. Discovery took over, and they did a merger, and they just got rid of a bunch of shows because nobody wants to watch the garbage, nonsense programming that is being inserted into these kids shows. And now we're seeing the government invest in this directly. And it's one of those things I'm very wary of, and I've got my eye on. So it's very, very, well, the show is kind of short today because I was out of internet area yesterday, so apologies about that, but let's get into it. First, if you want to support the show, head over to CanadaPoly.com. You can check out the forums. They're free. You can do a one-time payment or a monthly subscription. You can check out my book if you're interested in that. You can sign up for Kitchen Table Talks if you're interested in that. And if you shop at Amazon and you want to support the show, click here, and that does support the show. You can check out Canada Report or Locals or any of the other things that I do, and that's helpful too. Here is, well, this was a Substack talking about Mr. Global. And part one, we need to talk about Mr. Global. This is a conversation between Catherine Austin Fitts and this guy, CJ Hopkins, I guess. And the first episode was released yesterday. I haven't watched it yet. I'm interested, or it's maybe released today. No, yesterday, I think it was. And I haven't watched it yet, but it's talking about how did we get here? How did the pieces get moved to this point in history? And I have a feeling it has to do with the convergence of technology and the technological ability to actually do this. And Fitz has talked about this before, where you can reconcile your slave. You can say this person belongs to this this being, right? This Canadian is a Canadian person, and so he's that tax slave, right? That's the reconciling. But it doesn't matter what they do, cash or under the table or anything to that effect. They're putting in place the ability to control that all transactions, everything, and so. Yeah, you thought things were bad before, right? So I'm looking forward to seeing this and how they build on this, because Fitz has insight that is just unbelievable, and so we have access to it. I think it's wonderful. It's probably better than any of the movies released this year. I'm in the middle of Jurassic Park. It's ridiculous. I wouldn't say it's good. It's entertaining, maybe, but I wouldn't say it's good. It's more of a horror flick, though. The first Jurassic Park was not, I wouldn't put it in horror, but this Jurassic Park has jump scares and stuff. Anyway, regardless, back to this. Let's talk about vaccines to get started. Matt Strauss says the dam is breaking. We will be an open society with bodily autonomy again. And this is the Toronto Star, believe it or not, reporting on this. Unreasonable for Toronto to dismiss firefighters over vaccine status, arbitrator says. So this is a labor arbitrator. And in a decision that could set a precedent for other disputes over workplace vaccine mandates, a labor arbitrator has handed a victory to more than a dozen firefighters who were fined by the City of Toronto earlier this year after failing to get the COVID-19 vaccine or disclose their vaccination status. The arbitrator ruled that Toronto's mandatory vaccination policy for firefighters was and still is reasonable, and said it is supported by expert evidence that demonstrated the safety and efficacy of the vaccine the city requires its employees to accept. I don't know that that's still true, but regardless, the myocarditis levels, that's still acceptable. Yeah, we're willing to risk your life. And if you're not willing to risk your life, you're fired. Okay, sure. I don't know how the employer can assume that risk for you. That's not okay. No. Anyway, back to this. However, in a decision on Friday, arbitrator Derek Rogers concluded that the way the city enforced that policy was not reasonable, as it essentially meant dismissal for cause was the only and inevitable outcome of refusing the vaccine. Rogers said the city could have taken other steps short of disciplining and firing the workers and still achieve the goals of protecting other employees and the public. Yeah, firing these people was punitive. And how much money did they get from the government to take these actions? We know they got money to encourage vaccine confidence in Canada. This is the competition to encourage vaccine confidence in Canada, and they were up for $50,000 in grants. Yay! So number one organization, Sick Kids Hospital. Number two, the Museum Armand Frappier. I don't know. McMaster University, University of British Columbia, Mount Royal University, University of Ottawa, University of Windsor, University of Waterloo. I'm not going to try that one. Dalhousie University, right? Sorry, everyone. I keep saying Dalhousie because I didn't know that, but at Dalhousie, that's what it is. They got $50,000 too. Discovery Center got $50,000. Laurentian University got $50,000. The list keeps going and going and going. I was going to read most of these. It might be more impactful if I did. Is there more? Can I load more? No. University of Calgary. So University of Windsor, University of Alberta, so Memorial University of Newfoundland. They are using all of this money, because money, very lubricating, right? Very, very effective to get people to do things. Will you cross that road? No, I'm not crossing that road. Will you do it if I give you $100? Okay. Right? Here is Pierre Poilievre talking about the WEF. I just thought we'd get this out of the way, and then we're going to talk about Freeland again. Somebody was upset that half the show was on Freeland, and I thought the point wasn't Freeland. The point was a whole bunch of worse things happened, and nobody said a darn word. That was the point. Sorry I missed it. I'll try and put a finer point on it today. But anyway, first here's Pierre Poilievre talking about the WEF. Big crowd in Nanaimo as well.
Speaking of standing up for our people in Canada, we will have a government under my leadership that works for Canadians, and I will ban all my ministers from any involvement in the World Economic Forum.
Just the ministers? I mean, why just the ministers? Why wouldn't you ban everybody? Anybody in your caucus, anybody in the CPC, no WEF. We don't want foreign influence. It's that simple. Bingo, bango, bongo. No? I think that's easy. Dean says, holy cow, the Victoria media are going to be upset because Pierre Poilievre has a big crowd. And that's interesting. Here's Neil Oliver. And I'm just going to show you the first minute. This is 5 minutes. I don't know how you get a 5-minute TikTok video uploaded on Twitter. I'd love to be able to do that. I know how to stream on Twitter now, so I'm doing that a little bit. But how do you get a 5-minute video? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Here is Neil Oliver. He's quite good in his assessment of things, and I like his political commentary. And he's talking about how they're all in it together. And did you think that we wouldn't notice that? Like, did you think that we wouldn't see this? Here he is.
Folk we're watching now, it doesn't really matter who gets in. That's it. Whoever gets the top job will just be handed a script. They will be handed the Prime Minister's script, and they will deliver those lines. And you can see that because more and more the senior figures, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, the President of the United States, the Prime Minister of Canada, the President of France, they're all now delivering the same script You know, we've seen them all standing behind their podiums talking about Build Back Better, New World Order, a window of opportunity, a great reset. I don't know, it's as though they think we can't see them. It's as though they think we don't watch them all and wonder why they're all using the same form of words. Even Prince Charles is in on the act. He's touting the Great Reset on his own website. And what are we not going to notice that this is going on? That these people are operating like as though they're in a choir and they're all in harmony with one another. I think subconsciously I was aware of the fakeness of it and the fiction of it, but I didn't properly pay attention to it, and I didn't consider the consequences of being ruled over by puppets, or seeming to be, or accepting the rule of puppets. But now I can't ignore it any longer. And so I've been looking on at them, the front runners now, Rishi Sunak, Penny Mordaunt, and the rest of them, Liz Truss, and thinking they are devoid of principle. Most glaring at the moment is the way.
So he's talking about the UK race to replace Boris Johnson, and all of the people who are coming up are WEF puppets, for lack of a better term. And so that's becoming important in elections. Is that going to change the trajectory we're on? Goodness me, I hope so, right? Goodness me, I hope so. Okay, let's talk about Freeland. Here is the guy who yelled at Freeland. Here's Dan Dix introducing him. Go give him some views. Here we go.
To be able to explain the situation. So joining me on the line right now is Elliot McDavid. Sir, thank you so much for taking the time today to break down what happened there. Now, this is clearly going viral right now. People all over Twitter are upset about this, and I want to talk about the moment that led to you confronting the Deputy Prime Minister in the elevator. But how did this all come about for you today? Did you hear she was in town, or how did this all start?
I heard maybe an hour before I walked into City Hall in Grand Prairie. I heard that she was in town, and they were doing a little bit of a do downtown. They got a bandstand set up, and it's the grand opening of a hospital that took 5 years longer to build than they said it was, and billions of dollars over budget. And that's why she's in town, I take it. And then I talked to somebody else at a business in Grand Prairie, and they said that the city of Grand Prairie was hosting her. And hey, I love the country and I love all people. I don't discriminate against anybody, what their vaccination status is, their color, their creed. I love everybody. This country's in trouble, and that's all there is to it. And so I heard about that, and I got upset that the city of Grand Prairie, what it did was it cemented in my mind exactly where the city of Grand Prairie is when it comes to the WEF and the globalist and tyranny. So I just went down to talk to somebody peacefully, and I never thought in my wildest dreams that she would have walked in the door a minute after. Because you've seen the video. The video was not doctored. I mean, she walked in the door probably a minute after we got there, and I had zero. I don't typically rehearse stuff anyway, but that's how I felt. And I typically don't swear a lot, but this country's been kicked and pushed and shoved around by these tyrannical communists, I call them, that are in power, and it rolls downhill right to municipal, to provincial, to federal, and I had enough.
Yeah.
So yes, I got excited and I swore a bit. I mean, but hey.
So, I think the reality of what happened, and I said maybe it's staged. I didn't find this person. Dan Dix found this person, and other people connected with this person. So if that hadn't happened, if I hadn't seen this person chat here with Dan Dix, I would still wonder if it was staged. Somebody said, if you didn't know this was staged right from the get-go, you're an idiot. And I thought, when I saw it, I didn't think right away it was staged. I thought, oh, he's angry. It was only after a few other times of watching it that I thought, okay, maybe there's something else going on here. After watching this, I think probably it's straight up. He's being genuine, it looks to me. And they're just making hay out of it. And I return to my original premise that says they provoke until they get a response that they can use. because nobody responded when Kean says, remember when someone drove a car through an anti-Trudeau demonstration and Chrystia Freeland didn't condemn it? I remember. Right. Nobody said boo when that happened, but Chrystia Freeland gets sworn at by a guy who's ticked off, and that's national news for a day and a half. It ticks me off. The whole point is nobody in government is taking seriously the grievances that are being brought to them, and instead they're continuing on with their Great Reset and their same promises that they were delivering, I suppose, and they refuse to respond to the realities of the world. And it's very frustrating, for lack of a better term. Sun Queen says, this seems like important context for the people blaming Poilievre for the guy yelling at Freeland. Here's the same guy yelling at Poilievre. He's not a fan of him either. The audio is not very good. I'm not going to play this just because we watched the guy give an interview. And I mean, it seems like he's engaged enough to go down to the local office to talk to somebody. He's engaged enough to yell at the deputy prime minister. He's going to yell at Pierre Poilievre too. And you have that right in Canada. You are able to peacefully express yourself, even if people don't like it, even if you call them names they don't like, even if everybody says that's abhorrent. It's not illegal. You can do it if you want to, as long as you're not saying, I'm going to beat you up into a bloody pulp or anything like that, right? Don't threaten them. Why? But you're allowed to say that. You're allowed to say it. I'm sorry. You are. And that is important in our freedom. It is important because people who are making decisions like Freeland with zero due process, zero charges, freezing bank accounts, people are going to get angry. And then when they say, after being provoked by being attacked by the government, by having bank accounts frozen, those people are the ones who are wrong because they're not very classy in how they say it. Get real. Get real. Look at the meat of the grievance. Look at the problem, not at how the problem is articulated by a few people. Jeepers creepers. Natalie says, Freeland was physically intimidated. Oh, really? Let me remind you exactly what happened to Canadians when they tried to protest against Liberals just 6 short months ago. So this is video from Quebec. The government was laughing while they were freezing people's bank accounts who supported this. It's wild. Here we go.
Goose! 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 Goose!
Police assaulting a person on the ground. Police kneeing a person on the ground. Police punching a person in a cruiser. Police kneeing another person on the ground. Breaking windows to gain access to cars that stop on the road. Trampling old ladies with walkers on horseback. Riot police in lines. Assault with a billy club? I don't know what those clubs are called. It's not a bow like Donatello's bow. It's shorter. Officers on horseback to clear crowds. Breaking into SUVs. Pointing weapons, AR-15s. More billy clubs. Arresting elderly people in their pajamas. Where's the outrage for that? Where's the outrage for that from the politicians? Where are the people speaking out about that, right? Here's Justin Trudeau, and he says that the backlash happens every time a woman tries to speak up. He says, women, every time you try to say something, this is what happens. For real, here we go.
Threats, violence, intimidation of any kind are always unacceptable, and this kind of cowardly behavior
He's talking about Freeland.
Threatens and undermines our democracy and our values of openness and respect upon which Canada was built. As leaders, we need to call this out and take a united stance against it, because no matter who you are, who you love, the color of your skin, how you pray, where you're from, your gender, you deserve respect, and you deserve to live in peace without fear of threats or violence.
What about people who freeze bank accounts without due process, regardless of their sex or who they love or anything like that? What about those kind of people, Justin? What about armed officers who are attacking unarmed civilians? What about people on horseback who are trampling over people who have walkers? What about all of those people? I think it's really interesting how they're using Freeland's sex to pivot this into LGBT intolerance. No matter who you love, as a woman, you should be able to blah, 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 blah. It's not believable. It's a step too far. I think they're unrelated, in my opinion, because Freeland is being attacked because she's the finance minister, deputy prime minister, and she directly attacked Canadians through freezing their bank account without due process. That is the reason that she has become a lightning rod for people to be upset with her, because she's terrible. And so pivoting and saying it's because she's a woman, and also LGBT and racialized people also need to be blah, blah, blah. It's a step too far. They're two unrelated things, in my opinion. But you can get the everyday person to almost get there, to see how it's kind of related. Anyway, here's the rest of this. Apologies. It's only another 20 seconds. Here we go.
And I can tell you that our colleagues on this stage, and indeed our government, will always fight for this, particularly true today as we celebrate Pride in our capital city, but every day as well. Threats.
This is new. Why is Pride being celebrated in late August? What is going on? Pride used to be a week, right? Again, Trudeau's focusing on Freeland and not focusing on all of the other terrible things that happened. Again, here's more footage of officers attacking a person on the ground with their knees. And Sir Patrick says, I can't believe they did this to poor Freeland, right? So Jyoti Gondik, who's the mayor of Calgary, I believe right now, put out this tweet stream, Gondik, I think that's how you say it. And it's a whole bunch, it's 24 tweets. We're not going to go through all of the tweets because it's just, it is jaw-dropping. Jaw-dropping what they've made out of this. But she says, I've been asked by some people why I haven't made a public statement about the assault on our deputy prime minister. The assault on the deputy prime minister? Holy smokeroonies. They've reimagined this. Somebody swearing at the deputy prime minister, I don't think is assaulting her. Maybe verbal assault. If you put verbal assault, maybe. But even so, it was kind of a short, thing that happened. It was very, very short. She got in an elevator and was gone. That's that. Anyway, the assault on the Prime Minister. To be blunt, I had to sit with my thoughts for a couple of days because this incident is not isolated and it brings up too much pain and fear. Yes, fear. That's as far as I got. I couldn't get very much further. And, you let me know how the rest of the thread goes. Let me know if it goes the way I think it's going to go. But yesterday's premise was communists always claim victimhood. So that's my hypothesis on how the rest of that thread's going to go. And she did it right in the first tweet. So I'm not confident that I'm wrong, but I'm not also going to waste my time and read through that garbage. Here's Pierre Poilievre responding to what happened to Chrystia Freeland, and he diffuses the situation in a pretty effective way. Here we go.
Well, it's absolutely unacceptable, and I can relate, of course, because I've been the subject of so much online harassment and abuse. My wife has received so much horrific material directly to her social media account that we've had to hire a private security firm to protect our family against all of that abuse. So unfortunately, this is all too common and all too long-standing. We have to put an end to it and demand that everybody treat other Canadians with respect when we debate political ideas.
So it's a good general statement. He denounces it right away. Oh, terrible. Our family had to also deal with this situation because blah, 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 blah. And I thought it was a good response. Actually, it's a better response than I thought he was going to give. And I was impressed with it. And I think that people are angry. I'll show you Catherine McKenna in just a second. They're angry about the ability for Mr. Poilievre to turn it back on the left. So it's an interesting little tennis match going on right now, and fun to watch. Here's Catherine McKenna responding to Pierre's response, and she says, to be clear, it's terrible that Poilievre and his wife has faced harassment, but that should make it easier to call out an attack on Deputy Prime Minister immediately, unequivocally, directly on your Twitter, and to publicly support more security for ministers and MPs facing threats. Waiting. So I think it's super funny that Miss McKenna believes that Pierre Poilievre should respond exactly the way she expects on exactly her schedule. Weird, right? Isn't that strange? Isn't that a strange thing for a former government person to believe she has that kind of power, or even believe she has that kind of sway, that kind of influence? Weird. True North is reporting, yesterday I showed you a RCMP detachment in Alberta that was surrounded by the community, and there were some angry words, and I said I'm not going to play the video. Here's more context to that situation. I just wanted to let you know what was going on. Alex Van Hark says the Alberta RCMP dropped a condition which would force him to end contact with his best friend and fellow protester after 200 people showed up to an RCMP detachment to protest his detainment. It was more than 200 people. 200 people. I don't know True North. 200 people? It looked like more than 200 people to me. Here's a longer Trudeau clip where he's talking further about racialized minorities, women, etc., etc., etc. Here's a CPAC one, and he says, we have to ask ourselves what kind of country we are, what kind of country we want to be. I would love to be a country that is self-governed and not governed by a Trudeau or the World Economic Forum. That's where I would love to have for Canada. That's my wish list for Christmas 2022. Dear Santa. The CTV News is reporting, mealworm seasoning. Scientists explore creepy crawly flavors or flavoring to satisfy meat cravings. How about, this is a wild idea. How about we just keep eating meat? It's so crazy. I know it just might work, right? Holy smokeronis. Stop your crazy, insane plans and just let us get back to the farming we've done for generations, right? Hey, it's just so crazy. It might work, right? So that's how I feel about mealworms. Mealworms, despite, I'm sure there's going to be some kind of actual push and not a push to just disgust people. I think at this point it's disgust. And then if they're going to force it, it's going to be on the heels of a famine, right? I don't know. Adam Brooks is a UK guy. He's reporting on this. He says, it should be down to the people if cash is to be phased out, not governments or the banks. Put it to a referendum and see the answer. So the Daily Express is reporting millions facing hardships with the end of cash in 5 years. Now there's more details to this, but these are the types of warning shots that I pay attention to because it's indicative of what's coming. This is the kind of messaging. And if not this messaging, then a tuned message. As things fail in other places, they try a different tactic entirely here, or a tuned tactic. Similarly, in Australia, they came up with an internet censorship Google News bill. And when Canada came up with their bill, they looked at the failures and the revisions made to the Australian bill to craft Canada's bill. It's still complete incompetence. The people who are crafting the bill have absolutely no idea of the technology they're trying to regulate. So they don't understand it at a fundamental core level. And so trying to regulate it sounds like monkeys trying to type Great Expectations on 1,000 typewriters or something to that effect. They don't get it, and they won't get it unless they try and use it. And then if they try and use it, they'll say, do you know anybody can say anything they want on here? Do you know what they're saying about me? Hashtag, whoever. Yeah. So anyway, regardless, the regulators know that they don't know what they're talking about. And watching them try and regulate anything is just painful. It's painful. It's like knowing something about a news broadcast and knowing that the news broadcaster knows nothing about the news broadcast. CTV Ottawa says the federal government says it will prioritize direct funding for community groups under Canada's first ever federal LGBTQ ST plus Ramalama Ding Dong plan. So I think this is exactly the same as the anti-hate funding. It's the same as funding Leif Marouf to the tune of $600,000 to teach anti-racism. It is funding the fox to guard the hen house and giving him the keys. It's all of the most terrible things that you could imagine, right? And all of that money could go to fixing healthcare. Well, the problem with the healthcare thing is we've hired everybody that we could hire and alienated everybody we could alienate. And so there's nobody to hire. So throwing money at healthcare just really means building infrastructure and giving more money to hospital administrators, which they don't need, or more money to public health, which it doesn't need either, because both have failed completely. So I'm not sure I agree with this, but still, it's the principle of the thing. Our Alf W says, don't we have an inflation and healthcare crisis, right? Yeah, but no. Trudeau says 75% of the funding will go towards community organizations focused on diversity and inclusion, just not inclusion of those ideas that they don't like, right? Anybody who says, isn't that rainbow flag sort of conquering lots of schools, lots of libraries, lots of city councils, and then once a flag is conquering at that pace, it doesn't seem like an LGBT equality thing. It seems more like communists putting their flag in places they've conquered. I see the LGBT flag and I don't see, yay, equity and inclusivity, etc. I see a scary regime taking shape, and it's not about inclusivity and equity. It's about power. It's all about power. Anita Anand says, today, the Prime Minister and Minister Ian, launched, it's not Len because Len would have a capital L, Ian, launched Canada's first ever 2S LGBTQLI plus action plan. You can't say that with a straight face. It's ridiculous. A whole of government approach that will help us build a Canada where everyone is free and welcome to be their true, authentic selves, unless you have something to say against the Trudeau government, in which case you're a right-wing extremist. And what do we do? How do we tolerate these people when they get angry that we call them racists, etc., etc., etc.? It's very interesting, this whole push for tolerance and be your authentic selves. And yes, I'll cut off your breasts and your penis to do all of that for you, but don't you dare question the regime. Don't you dare question the narrative, right? Don't you dare question that Chrystia Freeland being attacked is the most important story, and absolutely not important to focus on the frozen bank accounts or the truckers who were assaulted or the windows that were smashed because somebody stopped on a roadway, or the elderly people who were arrested, or the fact that tow truck operators wouldn't help the government until they invoked the Emergencies Act. And that's the only way they could solve the problem. Do you believe that? That's what they're going to try. That's the case they're going to try and make. Anyway, regardless, all of those things did not deserve to be spoken out about. But Chrystia Freeland getting sworn at, that, my friends, is the most important story in Canada today. And that's crazy because there's so many more things that are important. And again, the point I was trying to make yesterday, and apologies if I didn't, was that the reality is inflation is more important. The immigration destroying our housing supply and demand balance is important. The food supply security is important, and making sure our farmers can produce without unnecessary taxes disrupting their ability to make a profit and to deliver cheap food. We have oil and gas and energy supply and demand issues that are being made apparent and exacerbated around the world. In the United Kingdom, there are things we should be talking about that. And instead, our government is focused on LGBT and Chrystia Freeland. And that's incompetence. And it's not by mistake. Okay? It's incompetence because it looks like they're doing it out of some kind of benevolence, but it's not. It's not goodwill that's driving these policies. It's, I think, a desire to do harm to the fabric of what makes Canada Canada. And I don't know why they would do that, but here we are. And so all of what's happening, all of the incorrect focus, they can say, we're doing this for you, Canadians. But that's not true, and it never was. Just like we're doing this lockdown for your safety, or we're firing these healthcare workers to secure the healthcare system. It's not true, and their actions are damaging. And just because they say it is, doesn't mean we should believe them. It doesn't matter how big of a temper tantrum they throw in the press. And I think that's the point. And that's enough out of me. Thanks for watching, everybody. Sorry it's a short show, but I'm in Newfoundland, and it's difficult to maintain the internet when you're on a fishing boat. So, and it's super fun, so I'm having a great time. But, sorry. That's the end of the show today. So thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co. Check out Speaking Moistly and all the stuff I do on there. I don't know if I'm going to get together with Greg this week, but we'll be back with a vengeance next week, probably. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.